Apologies for no upload yesterday. I was just out there training, man, and I got really tired whenever I came back, but I made sure that I had this PowerPoint presentation ready to go for today so I could just come back and just turn on OBS and start recording. This is going to be 13 overrated fighters who don't deserve half of their glazers. I'm not going to go too hard on Jose Aldo to begin with. I just have him here as a placeholder, but this is definitely, I mean, he's not an active fighter in the roster, but I was only here to watch bantamweight Aldo. I never saw any of his work at featherweight, and as soon as he came to bantamweight, he fought Peter Yan, and then I was like, okay, well, that was kind of underwhelming. Because prior to that, what I had seen was the Conor McGregor knockout. I had never seen any of this guy's prime. And as the skill level of the average featherweight just seemed to do this throughout the years, it never really seemed like Jose Aldo really had it like that. Which, I mean, I'm probably tripping whenever I say this, but Jan Marab, I mean, he did get that win over Johnny Martinez after he retired the first time. And then he fought Ayman Zahabi and he got dealt with. It's like, Volk is for sure my featherweight GOAT. And as far as like all-time bantamweights, I don't even know where to rank Jose Aldo in that running. Some of the guys who support the channel who are older than I am or have just been watching UFC longer than I have probably know that this guy is like has a really good career. But his resume largely to me just looks like he had a lot of defenses against guys who are like, I mean, the best for that time, but Jose Aldo kind of reminds me of like Wilt Chamberlain putting up 100-point games against guys who were just building airplane engines all day before they came to the octagon to fight. He still walked so that all of our favorite featherweight champions could run, but I'm not even here to talk about him right now though. So let's get to the other picks that I have. These are also in no particular order. I just feel like all these fighters are heavily glazed for no reason personally. So Kai Asakura is going to be the first dude that we talk about. It's impossible to be Francis Ngannou at flyweight. It just doesn't happen. You can't have that type of power in your hands. Unless your name is like John Lineker or something. There's never been a flyweight fighter who can just one-shot people and walk off KO them in like the opening seconds of a fight. That just doesn't happen. And people talk about Kai Asakura like he has this quality. I noticed pretty early on in the Tim Elliott fight, whenever he started letting his hands go and comboing, I was like, all right, I mean, the punches are fast and they look strong, but it really doesn't look like he's about to one-shot anybody with the punches that he's throwing. That's something that I noticed immediately, and I was right about that. Like, Tim Elliott was able to hang tough through whatever combos Kai Asakura was throwing at him. And especially at flyweight, to be a specialist in kickboxing, it's not really that advantageous versus being a grappler, because most people at flyweight are good kickboxers. If you can name anybody in the top 15 of the 125 division in the UFC, they're probably pretty decent at kickboxing. And if they're not that good at kickboxing, they're a grappler, or they can do both, and the grappling completely mitigates the kickboxing if that's all you have. And we've seen this happen to him twice now. And people like to always say, oh, he's not bad at grappling, he just fought Pantoja in his debut. So I would like to take you to Exhibit A at the bottom right corner of the screen there, where he's getting the life squeezed out of him by Tim Elliott inside of that guillotine. His legs are like directly up in the air, like a goalpost. And he was just getting like his face squeezed into a bright pink. I knew the tap was imminent. There was no way he was getting out of that guillotine. And it was like one arm in for a little bit. Tim Elliott has a really nasty guillotine. It kind of feels sometimes like Charles Johnson is who we want Kai Asakura to be. And I'm probably going to make a list of the most underrated fighters in the UFC as well. And we will be discussing Charles Johnson on this list for sure, because I don't feel like he has enough hype for the accomplishments that he has in the promotion. I don't know how this guy, Kai Asakura, maybe it's just because of how not competitive flyweight was at one point. Every fighter from other promotions outside of the UFC, whenever they make their debut, except for Kai Asakura, was like hated on. But everyone just believed in this guy. He was supposed to be the chosen one. Even whenever he fought Pantoja, people were like, oh, that kickboxing. Pantoja better watch out. And he just gets choked. And it happened again against a guy who people completely discredited the idea of it happening to him again with. Something that I noticed from watching his footage is that his striking only works whenever he can knee grounded opponents. Like, his entire highlight reel from Rizin is him knocking people down and then throwing knees at their heads while they're on all fours, or just soccer kicking them and getting the finishes that way. Whenever he can't do it, he's neutered. It's like half of his game is gone. So yeah, Kai Asakura definitely overrated for the UFC 125 division, and just in general, I think that people overstate his abilities to a very high degree. The next fighter is going to be Shara Bullet. The reason why I would say that he's overrated is because he's not a finisher. His flair doesn't keep him safe from damage, too. He's a very tricky fighter, but he's always getting hit. Especially in a fight like Marc-Andre Barrios. I wasn't expecting him to weather such heavy damage. He was very far ahead in this fight until the second round whenever he got his entire nose busted. His entire face got busted in that second round. He'd already lost to MVP, but MVP has been successful, so people kind of scrub that from their memories. He went life and death with Marc-Andre Barrios, though. You can't do that. And I'm not sure if this lack of defense is entirely his fault. Being half blind is overlooked by many people. We acknowledge that he only has one eye, but how much that affects him whenever he's fighting in the octagon, I feel like that's overlooked. I was doing research into this too. All my boys who train, I'm going to go back to the MMA gym tonight. Please be careful whenever you're on those mats. This guy caught an elbow on his right eye, and he had to have 8 surgeries to try to rescue it. And, like, it didn't end up coming back to him. So, super unlucky, but it does happen. Detached retinas. I mean, Bisping is an example of that going down too. Make sure that you keep those hands up, fellas. Shara Bullet, he's a trick pony that's designated for the Abu Dhabi events. We don't see him outside of those cards because he can't get sanctioned to fight by American or European commissions because he is blind in one eye. And most of all, I think that he's glazed on the basis of that double spinning back fist that he landed on Arman Tsarukyan. It was cool, but it wasn't that cool. And that clip got reposted, and people were talking about that being like, oh, this is a knockout. And it wasn't that cool, man. That was the thing that made it so that people completely forgot about the MVP loss, is the fact that he landed that double spinning back fist, which it's like, all right, man. Okay. Let me know if I'm hating. I just really don't think that that clip was as, like, great as people wanted to make it out to be. I feel like it was overly glazed. The next fight that we're going to talk about is Khalil Rountree Jr. He earned some stripes, but I don't think he's worthy of Batman. People being like, oh yeah, Khalil Rountree beats people up like he's Batman. I understand that Khalil Rountree Jr. had a torn meniscus going into the fight with Jamal Hill, but it was very reserved, his performance in that fight. He still dominated it, but Pereira beat him up like he was Batman. And he got a bunch of clout. I mean, he dropped Pereira, sure, but he got beat up badly in that fight. I would say Khalil Rountree got more clout from losing to Pereira than Magomed Ankalaev got from outstriking Pereira, which is like crazy. But one thing that I will note is that knocking out Anthony Smith is kind of like a kiss of death. Minyoung Zhang, Glover Teixeira eventually got his. I mean, if you keep fighting for long enough, eventually you're going to get knocked out. I mean, that's just the name of the game. But it feels like that guy getting a free win over Anthony Smith at some point, it dooms you to fail. Before Zhang, Johnny Walker's last win was Anthony Smith, and then he went on a 2 KO streak. I mean, that was punctuated by a no contest between him and Magomed, but in the rematch, he got slumped. And for as overhyped as I think this guy is, his custom shorts are really tight. I cannot tell a lie. But personally, I feel like Yuri Prochazka is about to beat this guy like he got suspended from school. But he's still going to have people rocking with him going into that fight week, so I think that he's overhyped. Tom Aspinall is the next fighter that we're going to talk about. We don't even know exactly how good he is yet, and people are saying that he's a heavyweight GOAT. I'm very sad about the fact that John Jones retired without fighting this dude. For the fact that that happened, and Jones, he did duck. After further review, John Jones ducked Tom Aspinall. We deserve that fight to know exactly who was better between the two of them, because people just kind of count that as a win for Tom Aspinall, even though they didn't fight. I feel like we needed to see it in order for him to be undisputedly the best heavyweight ever, and that very well could be the case. It's just, I feel like we're speaking too soon a little bit, because he could lose to Cyril Gane. I think it's unlikely. I think there's about a 90% chance that he does come out and dominate him, but what if he doesn't? And then what? And we've done all this hyping up of Tom Aspinall. There's been no litmus test to place the skill set of Tom Aspinall in direct comparison with other greats of this division. And again, it's not his fault, but his only loss in MMA, his only real loss, other than like a disqualification or a time where he hurt himself on accident, is going to be via heel hook. So that maybe even means that Walter Walker has the recipe to defeat this guy. We don't really know yet, so we need to test him more. If he packs up Cyril Gane like the other people that he's fought already, I'll glaze him too. I'm like right there to agreeing with a lot of the people in the comment sections who are like, yeah, Tom Aspinall is that guy. I just need to see him fight a couple more times, because his fights just end so fast, you don't really learn anything about the way that he fights. It'd be nice to see him go into the second round. But then again, that further reinforces how good he is to a lot of people, the fact that his fights don't ever last. I still respect him on many levels. I just want to see him get tested a little bit more before I acknowledge him as the undisputed greatest heavyweight of all time, or the greatest heavyweight of the modern era. And it's going to be difficult because he lacks proper tests. After Cyril Gane, we're looking at a rematch with Volkov or a fight with Jailton Almeida, and he probably packs up both of those guys again for Volkov, and then Jailton Almeida doesn't even stand a chance if he beats the crap out of Cyril Gane. So time will tell. I'm just super salty over the fact that John Jones ran away from this fight. Because we were supposed to watch him fight Aspinall, Ngannou, and Rumble Johnson by now. Peace be with his soul. And we never got any of those scraps. The next fighter is Reiner De Ridder. Some of y'all some Reiner De Ridder De Ridders, if you know what I'm saying. And I personally feel like Fluffy solos this guy with low diff. The craziest part about this is that, like, the same people who are glazing Reiner De Ridder and saying that he has the answer for Khamzat are the same guys who called me a jerk for saying that he would beat Robert Whittaker. Which is, like, it baffles me. The fact that I was like, yeah, he's going to beat Rob. And people were like, no, he's not. He's not as fast as Rob. And Rob is better at striking. And that's the funny bit about this, is that we overrate Reiner De Ridder's grappling so much because he beat old men or strikers with it. And he only struck with other grapplers. Think about it. GM3 even. That fight was messy, but it was held largely on the feet. He did submit him, but it was after he had hurt him. Robert Whittaker, he was throwing knees at that guy the whole time. Maybe he stacked his guard like a few times throughout the fight, and then he shot a couple of takedowns, but he was failing the takedowns. He's not that good at wrestling. Against Bo Nickel, the fight didn't even make it to the floor. And then against Kevin Holland, he subbed him. So the only thing that we really have to base his grappling off of are the achievements that he has in other promotions, which it's not fair to do that for anybody else except for this guy. Whenever we're talking about Bellator champions or ONE champions or Risen champions, we can never safely be like, oh yeah, well, he's a good grappler for the UFC because of what he's done in a promotion outside of it. But people love to do that with Reiner De Ridder. And I know he has that inverted triangle choke. Like, that was really sick, that clip. But who did he hit it on? It was not UFC caliber talent. So I think we need to hold our horses on this one for a little bit. Fluffy has proven so much more in the UFC than this guy, and he's proven to be at least on par in the grappling in terms of his wrestling than Reiner De Ridder. If his jiu-jitsu isn't that good, his top pressure is going to completely mitigate this guy's bottom control, which we've seen in the Malikin fight. This guy he can get manhandled. And I grappled with a guy who was on the peptides yesterday at the gym, and like, I know what that's like. That strength is different, but Fluffy might as well be on some gear, because, I mean, that guy is freakishly strong for his build. I don't think this guy is the fighter that a lot of people are hyping him up to be, personally. I could say the same thing about Renato Moicano. This guy has used social media to convince those who haven't seen his fights with Fiziev or Rafael Dos Anjos that he's a top 10 lightweight. I kind of even fed into this, too, whenever he was going to fight Beneil Dariush. If you're a polished striker with decent power and good takedown defense, or if you're a good wrestler with top control, you can punish this man. And you can make it look super easy as well. People only root for Renato Moicano to watch his post-fights. He's chinny, he just has incredible heart and decent grappling. And decent grappling is an understatement. He's a good grappler. But really what he's like is like a diet Charles Oliveira that can speak English and has a funny gimmick about like the economy and money, which, I mean, I respect him. I think he's a very smart man in terms of speaking about these things. He's done more research into it than I have, and I would trust him to explain to me how I should balance my checkbook and how I should be investing. And considering that, he's never gonna go broke. So I mean, like, CTE aside, this guy has a good head on his shoulders. But largely his biggest wins lately have been against Jalen Turner, who got triangle choked from Ignacio Bahamundes off of his back. And then also Benoit Saint-Denis. And like, how bad is Benoit Saint-Denis' grappling? This guy got smashed by Renato Moicano with the guy's shoulder blade sticking out of his neck. I'll forever remember the fight between him and RDA. RDA, who was like over the hill and had gotten beat up. I think he fought Jeff Neal after this. He got beat up by Jeff Neal after this fight. Renato Moicano got pieced by that guy, and whatever Rafael Dos Anjos wanted to do in that octagon with him, he was able to do it. I'll never forget this. I should have remembered it before I picked him to beat Beneil Dariush. If he goes against another like power grappler like one of these fellows that he can't take down himself and that can take him down, I will not pick Renato Moicano to win that fight. The next fighter that we're going to talk about is Michael Venom Page. He has no finishes in the UFC. I think that he admires his work too much instead of chasing finishes, and he's not a finisher. And that's something that's frustrating for me to watch. Like in the Kevin Holland fight, he was getting big rock moments out of Kevin Holland. He was wobbling him on the feet, and then he was sweeping him off of his feet. Instead of chasing a finish or jumping into his guard, which, I mean, that's probably part of the game that Kevin Holland wanted him to play. He's not the best grappler either, is another point that I'll make. He would just go on like... It's like, dude, get in there and finish the fight, please. I think that his grappling is going to hold him back eventually. He's going to hit a roadblock. And that's the reason why I think he wants to go back down to 170, is because the only matchups left for him at 185 are with grapplers or people who could wrestle him at least. We saw Jared Cannonier had the ability to take him down and control him there for pretty much 5 minutes in the third round. So that's the reason why he wants to fight with like a Carlos Prates But that's the thing about Venom Page, is that he needs to handpick his matchups at this point, because if he goes and fights with like a Buckley, he's going to get wrestled in that fight. Like, Buckley is going to wrestle his socks off. So it makes sense. Like, the Carlos Prates call out, it made sense. Even though I wouldn't even favor him to win that fight in the striking. He has a better chance of winning that fight against Carlos Prates than like pretty much any of the other contenders at 170 right now. Because those guys will wrestle him. I just wish he'd come to the UFC earlier. He's like, how old right now? Dog is 38. Which, I mean, like, he still has a lot of power for being a 38-year-old. Comparatively speaking to other 38-year-olds that we've seen. And speed, too. But imagine if we're dealing with a guy who's like 32. Like, 33-year-old Michael Venom Page. Ooh, I'd be lit. You'd have so much time to develop more skills and to get even further than he's already gotten. I mean, for trick ponies like Shara Bullet or other strikers that will only strike and not shoot takedowns, I trust Michael Venom Page to win those fights, but that's just not the current landscape of the UFC that we're looking at right now. These guys will wrestle and they're going to shoot takedowns on him, especially since they've just recently seen the success that Jared Cannonier had with taking a wrestling-heavy game plan. Later on into the fight, they're going to for sure be shooting at this guy, and they're going to be securing these takedowns if he takes the wrong matchup. We've seen this guy get neutralized in the clinch, and even just in a few grappling sequences by Ian Gary, too. After landing a very strong right hand, which may have changed the pacing of the fight in his favor, Ian Gary got things back on track just by taking him down, or grappling and controlling him for a little bit. For that reason, Michael Venom Page, I noticed that he plays it very safe in his fights. He doesn't want to get taken down and grappled and just lose time off of the clock, which he could be using to dance and hit the Thriller Michael Jackson on people. He's doing a lot to try to not overextend so that people can get in on his hips, because he knows that's his weakness. He's very good on the mic, especially in like pre-fight press conferences, but he overpromises for my liking. He said he was going to knock out Jared Cannonier, and he had opportunities to finish Jared Cannonier after he was dropping him once per round, and he just kind of looks at his work and just laughs and points. This guy is a lot like Nate Diaz, but Nate Diaz was a better grappler than Michael Venom Page. It would have been really interesting to see both of those fighters in their prime fight at 170. Well, like a more prime version of each. Michael Venom Page would have probably blitzed Nate Diaz on the feet, but if he could have gotten that takedown, then I don't know, man. That would have been a sweet matchup. There's still definitely fun fights left for him, but he's got to be calculated in which contracts he takes, because can't fight with grapplers, this guy. The next fighter that we discussed is Mateusz Rebecki. I don't know how they be saying it on the broadcast. It's kind of frustrating because they always they're adding different consonants that aren't there in the name, like Roundbetsky. Like, dude, come on. Rebecki? I don't know. This guy is a Gary Coleman build. You can see it every single time that he fights. He got these little arms. He's got these little legs. His trunk is really big. You know, like whenever you do like the in-body scans at like NutriShop, or if you have one at your local gym as well, they give you the BMI analytics of how much your arms and your legs weigh. This guy has to have like 70% of his body mass like in his trunk, which is like his body, his like torso and abdomen. This guy's a human heavy bag as well. Does not move his head whatsoever. And he does just enough in these fights to make his losses able to be considered wars, but he still gets beaten up so badly in these fights. Chris Duncan proved this guy may never get ranked at lightweight just because it's too competitive. Another thing to add is that this guy has like 6 minutes and 15 seconds worth of cardio, and he puts way too much steam on his shots. He's trying to finish the fight with everything that he throws, and that gets him in trouble because he's completely voiding defense in doing this. And he's very counterable because he telegraphs. He's winding up all of these shots. It's like he's throwing baseballs whenever he's chucking these right hands at people. And it's crazy that even with, I think he has like 3 wins in the UFC and 5 fights total, he's already a gatekeeper. At the ripe age of 32, this guy is gatekeeping outside of the rankings at 155, which is like... The next fighter that we're going to talk about is Ludoveit Klein. Ludoveit Klein is a crazy hype job in my opinion. He went life and death with Roosevelt Roberts. He drew with Jai Herbert, again went life and death with that guy. It could have been argued that that fight with Roosevelt Roberts went to him as well. And also with Jai Herbert too, he could have lost that fight. If he can't wrestle his opponent, he's going to struggle in his matchups. But the thing about it is that he's supposed to be a great kickboxer. And his early record reflects this with like a bunch of first round finishes. And a bunch of highlights as well of him striking prior to him getting into these really close fights. He got done up by Nate the Train in 2021. And that was just because Nate the Train came in with a heavy clinching game plan, and he wrestled him too. In the Roosevelt Roberts fight, in open range, he was getting pieced up by Roosevelt Roberts, and he had to wrestle and time his entries on the takedowns in order to control the fight. Because in the stand-up, he was getting blitzed. One thing that I do appreciate is that he gave hype back to my boy Gamrot that he needed after losing to Hooker. Gamrot needed a dub over Ludoveit Klein the way that he scored it. And real ball knowers knew it was going to end that way too, based off of, again, the Nathan Train loss that he had taken in 2021. I mean, yeah, you can improve in 4 years, but sometimes you don't. Sometimes you get wrestled after wrestling had been priorly exposed as your weakness in the past. The next fighter that we're going to talk about is Myktybek Orolbai, a large grouping of 155ers in this portion of the video. I would say that Orolbai, Klein, and Rebecki are all shadow banned from the top 15. They're all part of this grouping of fighters that people want to believe are much better than they actually are. It's kind of the basis of me making this video, is how people overstate how good each of these fighters are whenever they're about to fight. I think we'd be surprised at who beats the 3 of these fighters that we don't think beats the 3 of these fighters. He had a classic with Mateusz Rebecki that he would have beaten easily if he was who we all thought that he was. If this guy's name was Dustin Jacoby and he didn't have such a unique facial structure, I don't think anybody would care about him. I'm not sure if anybody would. This guy would have 0 fans with the way that he fights. And that he fights once every 8 months too. And something that was super telling to me was the Tafik Musayev fight from the Azerbaijan card. He didn't stand with Tafik at all, and whenever he was standing with Tafik Musayev, sure, Tafik Musayev came from Rizin, which is like, those are good strikers over there. But he was getting outstruck on the feet. If you look at the strike stats, he didn't land as many significant strikes as Tafik Musayev. And I clearly remember flush lands for Musayev scoring on Orolbai before he got to the takedown and was able to sub him in round 1. So, I mean, I guess points for that. But I think the reason why this guy isn't who we think that he is as an MMA fighter is because he's one of these dudes who has 1 foot in and 1 foot out of the game. He's a lawyer in Kyrgyzstan. And every single time that he's making the press headlines outside of being announced for fights, it's because he's like riding a horse or playing some type of like polo type game. He talks about it being like his favorite game. This dude probably wrestled a lot through his youth, but doesn't even dedicate that much time to training anymore. That's the reason why he's not chomping at the bit to fight. He's probably making a lot more money as a lawyer in Kyrgyzstan. The next fighter that we're going to discuss is going to be Diego Lopes. And Diego Lopes is good, but he's definitely overrated. People view his loss to Volkanovski as if it was a one-off and can never happen again. That's the funniest thing that I've been finding in these online communities of people talking. Oh, that's just Volk. Diego Lopes isn't going to lose to Gene Silva. Nobody else can beat up Diego Lopes like Volkanovski did it. Yes, they can. And I think, again, it would surprise us who would be able to beat up Diego Lopes in a fight. Bro, maybe Yair Rodriguez would be able to school this guy. He's very plotty. And if you move laterally, there's like an entire video that was made online exposing how to beat strikers from his gym, like Irina Aldana, Alexa Grasso, and also Diego Lopes. Like how to school them in the boxing. Per that video, the only thing that you have to do is move laterally and then just tag from the outside. And that's what Volk, Shevchenko, and Norma Dumont were doing in those fights. And they were whooping that butt. If we look at his resume too, this guy's highest achievement is almost submitting Movsar Evloev with a knee bar. Because Sadiq Youssef, Dan Ige, Brian Ortega, and Pat Sabatini, these are not well-aging wins. Those 4 fights, I mean, they were good victories for him in the moment. But I can't believe that based off of those 4 wins, he was able to con a large part of the community, me, into thinking that he could beat Volk by KO just because he had knocked out a couple of guys that are on that level. In my opinion, I think his grappling is better than his striking. It's just that he doesn't have the best wrestling, so he can't showcase a lot of his jiu-jitsu in most instances. But that's the funny bit about it, is that he's a really skilled black belt. And as far as the striking goes, maybe he should be like relying on it less and becoming more of a grappling heavy style. And that's what people are saying, is that they think that Diego Lopes is going to win by out grappling Gian Silva. But I don't know, man. I don't know. This guy got exposed by a guy who's supposed to be like over the hill and washed. Even though it is our GOAT Volkanovski, he kind of got landslid in that fight, which is pretty nutty. All right, the next fighter, this is where the dislikes start flooding in. Mauricio Ruffy is very much overrated. I could have put the entire Fighting Nerds gym here, but there's different fighters who have proven that they deserve their spot at the table. Primarily Prates and also Gian Silva. Prates actually got a lot of aura from losing a fight against Ian Gary and then coming back and knocking out Jeff Neal. That was lit. That fight was turned. That spinning elbow was turned. But concerning Mauricio Ruffy, I would say that he's pillow-fisted. He also slumped my sensei too. Bobby Green trains at the facility that I'm going to go to tonight to train. So I feel a way about that. I can't lie to you guys. Watching that happen was like, it made me sad. He also has untested grappling. He's number 3 in the Fighting Nerds power rankings, in my opinion. I think that Caio Bajallo is in last place. This is ground to change after this weekend, of course, since both of them are going to be fighting in Paris. I'm releasing this video before the UFC Paris fight night. But I'm thinking that Mauricio Ruffy wins that fight against BSD and that Caio Bajallo loses to Imavov. We'll see what happens, but Mauricio Ruffy, he was chinned by Manuel Souza in 2019. Manuel Souza just got a contract out for the Contender Series. He looked really good in that fight, whenever he wasn't getting grappled, of course. But Mauricio Ruffy may have the same weakness to the grappling. We just don't know it yet. The thing about him not having the best punch power is that he's mad dynamic, so he can find finishes with other strikes that aren't a cross or a hook. He doesn't need to exclusively stick to the boxing in order to stop fights. So I do feel like he's overrated, though. And yes, I am a little bit biased and a little bit salty, too. The last fighter that we're going to talk about is going to be Arman Tsarukyan. Do people even know why they glaze Arman so hard? People, whenever I mention the best Arman fights, they're like, okay, yeah, Joel Alvarez from like 8 million years ago. And then we got dudes like Khabib talking about that there's 80-20 odds of him beating Topuria in a matchup, which like I don't agree. I think he's just trying to sell the fight. Tsarukyan, he largely inherited glazers from Charles. People who watched those 2 sub attempts be locked up by Charles Oliveira, the guillotine that Arman Tsarukyan almost got finished in, and then the Darce choke at the very end of the fight, they were like, no, Charles should have won based off of those. And then some months pass, and they're like, well, actually, Arman Tsarukyan is pretty cool. I think he beats Ilia Topuria. Tell me it didn't go like that, bro. But we have to remember, this guy got out-scrambled by Gamrot in his physical prime. He was 25 years old getting out-wrestled by Gamrot. People said that was a robbery, but I mean, dude, look. Grant Dawson beat Damir Ismagulov better than Arman did it. And these 2 fights were in the same year. Gamrot and also Damir Ismagulov. Arman Tsarukyan had a really underwhelming 2022, I think it was. His coolest clip was a 1-minute KO over Beneil after Charles did the same thing. And a year prior to this, I mean, it was not even a year prior to this. It was earlier that year. It just took Charles Oliveira 3 more minutes. But I mean, you still scored a first-round knockout over Beneil Dariush. It's not like it hadn't been done before. So the matchmaking of Charles Oliveira versus Arman Tsarukyan made sense. And people glaze like that axe kick that he threw, but this guy doesn't really have any real accomplishments to cling to, other than just winning fights. But he doesn't have any emphatic finishes to be like, yeah, that guy is like, he's a savage. Other than like maybe the Joel Alvarez fight, but Joel Alvarez never demonstrated himself to be a great grappler. This was a mismatch for Joel. And Arman Tsarukyan just did what he had to do. Every single time that he's fought another Caucasus wrestler or just a guy from the same part of the region of the world that he's in who knows how to grapple, it was a decision, and sometimes a decision that he lost. I'm not believing the hype just yet. Not with this guy. I need to see him fight Top Toro, and I think he gets knocked out brutally in that fight, and that's been my opinion. But I will say that of all of the people that Ilia Topuria brutally knocks out, he brutally knocks out Arman Tsarukyan the least, but he still does it. Totally still does it. I'm sure that we can all agree on this. No matter how you felt about the other picks, Peter Yan is so goated. It's unreal. So you guys, that's going to be it for this upload. I have more videos coming. Again, I'm sorry for missing the upload yesterday. I was training. I will be training later today. I think I'm going to go swimming at my gym right now. That sounds like fun. So I'm going to get to it, edit and upload this video, maybe drop a couple of shorts later on in the night. I'm going to work on another PowerPoint. I'll have that up tomorrow, my friends. So have a good day. I will catch you fellas in the next one.